I'm Tom Landon, and today we'll learn what it takes to reimagine a community. Welcome to What It Takes. Ask a Roanoker what our town is known for, and chances are they'll say something like, we were founded as a railroad town, but today our biggest employers are in healthcare. But that skips over a time when our biggest employer wasn't a railroad, but an industrial complex in southeast Roanoke owned by the American Viscose Corporation. It opened in 1917 and once pumped out rail cars full of rayon, and it was used in ladies' hosiery, draperies, and more. Since closing in 1958, it has been an industrial park that was home to dozens of local businesses, but also largely vacant. My guest today is developer Ed Walker, whose companies have successfully reinvigorated abandoned hotels and factories from Roanoke to Danville, and who is a nationally recognized champion of turning eyesores into showplaces. He set his sights on reimagining the Viscose plant as Riverdale, a mixed-use community that will one day be home to businesses, residents, and artists. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you very much, Tom.
I hope I got all that right.
You did. You got it all right.
Okay, and I just need to say right off the top.
Well, it was more complimentary, more favorable than it probably should have been, but I appreciate it.
I appreciate your humility, and I should say off the top that, Ed, we've known each other for a number of years. Your CityWorks Expo.
About 30.
About 30 years. And it's hard when you live in a place like Roanoke not to come across remarkable people and befriend them, so
That's your disclaimer.
I just want to say, full disclaimer, I'm not likely to grill you here.
Well, feel free to ask any questions that you want. I mean, it's a very transparent project.
Happy to have you here. Before we talk about Riverdale specifically, I want to ask you kind of what attracts you to projects like this. I mean, you've done some, you and your team of people, and it's a large number of people, have really done some remarkable things for this community and others. What gets you excited about doing this kind of work?
It's hard to know where to start answering that. There's so many, really special parts of it. There are a lot of very difficult and frustrating and challenging parts too. But the magic part of that, I think, in no particular order. I'm still astounded when you have all these wonderful colleagues like I've had over the years. And so when I think about the Patrick Henry or Cotton Mill or River House, that makes me think of folks like Nathan Vaught or Danny George or Scott Boswell or George Stanley. And, just there are literally scores and scores of people. And one of the problems is, for whatever reason, the attention gets focused on one person. And often I tend to get that attention however much I may prefer not to have it, because it's better on the folks that make it happen, which is just a long-winded way of saying one of the magical things, because I can't swing a hammer, I mean, I worked for Habitat for Humanity for 6 months, and about on the third day they said, we think you'd be better in the office. Right. And so, I don't really, I don't have those sorts of field skills, but one of the magical things is to watch the way the idea becomes construction drawings, and the construction drawings get to the guys in the field, and they deal with seemingly endless challenges, and make beautiful things come out of it. Like I think of our colleague Elias Da Silva, who's just a genius at taking really difficult things. The work that he did at the Patrick Henry was just beyond. And so that is one of the things, the marvel of watching, like how different trades and specialists come together. I think there's a really beautiful thing that's fundamentally about good government. So the communities that we succeed in always have really high level government where, we've had just a great run here in Roanoke with Darlene Burcham and Chris Morrill, and Bob Cow, and these are all folks who want to get great things done.
These are all city managers.
Yeah, city managers and stewards of the budget and all that sort of stuff, and really, move things forward. And then also, I have to say, it's like the code officials, there's a really important good government thing. I think of like Jeff Shawver and Neil Holland and others in the code department. And that sounds really boring to some people, but it's actually where a lot of the magic happens. So seeing private actors and public stewards and professional government and political leadership kind of come together and want to do something. And I didn't intend that, but that's precisely what happened at Riverdale, was just sort of this opportunity emerged to figure out a way to do something that any one of those actors couldn't have possibly done by themselves.
Right.
And then I guess to answer the original question about what sort of gets your attention, I will confess, and I sometimes worry about it, when you see an old building and you can make the imaginative leap in your mind to what it could be, the creativity of that, or the sort of seduction of transformation, is very compelling. And, you know, so compelling. I mean, I was really trying to sweep my way out of the door. I mean, I was really excited about spending as much time with Ina as possible.
Ina, your new wife.
That's right. And I was really trying to get more retired. And so I ask myself regularly, if not daily, weekly, you know, I think you have to watch that propensity to want to take action on projects like that.
Because you can't do everything. And as we look at Riverdale, this huge piece of land, I don't know how many acres it is.
It's like 102
right,
acres,
and so it's got stuff going on already. There's this beautiful old factory, but also it's got broken out windows and it looks kind of rough. You've told me before, you look at this as something like, not that we're looking at the end of our lives, but it's a capstone project,
sure feels
right?
That way, yeah.
You know, it's like,
all it takes is one bad early diagnosis, and I've really got my hands full.
But so, tell me about that property specifically, and what's going on there now?
Yeah.
Like, what's already there, and what do you hope to see there?
Yeah, so it is about, I think it's about 26 buildings. It's 102 acres. It's about 1 million square feet. You know, deferred maintenance does not begin to sort of touch the
right, because it hasn't been abandoned entirely, but a lot of it has been.
Right. I think it was sort of, you know, Roanoke Industrial Center, and I should point out, I mean, those folks did a lot of really great work in the last many decades, and there really are two chapters. There's the American Viscose chapter until 1958, and then there's the Roanoke Industrial Center, and it's kind of crazy to realize the Industrial Center was around longer than Viscose was. So in terms of like site history, neighborhood history, and all that, you know, it's really, really significant. So what's there now is there are scores of smaller businesses. It was really fun. I went through a great business called River Acceptance today, run by a guy named Randy Frazier, and they recycle computer parts. And they told me today an amazing thing. They took 1 million pounds of old CPUs and laptops and this and that, and were able to recycle enough of it where only 25,000 pounds went to the landfill. So like that's super interesting. Great little business. I'd never heard of them. So many other ones like Dominion Door and Hardware, B&R Sheet Metal. So we love all those fabricators. Noke Vans is over there. That's a really neat story. Carrie and Justin Blaircom. And so there's just a lot of that. And then you've got some great artists over there like Ralph Eaton and Brian Cunahan and David Wirtz, and you know, we'd like to see more of that. So there's a little bit of everything. And we've taken, it's somewhere now approaching 2 million pounds of debris out of there for recycling that was just like old cars and stuff.
A lot of cars, right?
Yeah, and so we've started this massive environmental cleanup, which is really job one. I mean, basically we want to turn that site and those buildings and that land to be not more public facing, but completely public facing. And so we'd love to see, gosh, if we could get, you know, a YMCA interested in being over there, or rehab departments, or art space, you know, the nationally and really internationally famous real estate developer To the Arts. They're coming next week to see if they'd like to do live work studio stuff for artists and musicians and whatnot. So there are a lot of different themes at work, but job one was to sort of tidy up. And, some days there's just an army of environmental folks over there, and the good news is it's better than we thought.
I know, because that's whenever I see, there have been several articles in both Cardinal News, Roanoke Times, and other publications about it, and in the stories, it's one thing, but then the comments, people are very skeptical.
It's funny, I don't read them. What do they say?
They're just skeptical.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
surely this is a toxic waste site.
Yeah.
And
not a bad,
and it's
not totally
surely
impossible,
going
right.
to flood,
Right.
and all of those things. And so, I think one thing that's interesting to me is as you look at it from above, if you were to look at it from a drone or from up
Right.
on the mountain or whatever, and you look to your left and you see, let's say you're on Mill Mountain, I don't know if you can really see it from Mill Mountain, but let's say you look to your left and there's Carilion and everything
Right.
that's going on there, and this incredible, growth of brain-based industries.
Right.
And, you look farther upstream and you see the old ice house,
Sure.
River House now,
Yep.
that you were involved in. And then you look to the right and there's Southeast Roanoke, and this it's a giant piece of property that's really not being utilized
Yeah.
to its fullest, right? What's the importance of having residential, it's an industrial park right now.
Yeah.
What's the importance of having people live there?
Well, so much of this stuff, it's why I sometimes sort of shy away from the word developer, because there's so many things about that I really am not like a technical, traditional sort of B-school developer. To me, it's very sort of personal and sort of idiosyncratic. I don't know, it doesn't always necessarily make sense. There's not always necessarily a business case, but you can't get fuzzy-headed about that either, because the first big mistake you make will be the last project you do. And so if you want to stay in the game, you've got to make sure that you do a good job of making sure the lenders get paid and all that stuff. To me, the diversity is about the feeling you get. Like Grandin Village is a great example. It's like the feeling you get when you're in a place that's activated and occupied by people doing different things a lot of the time. And there's just that energy, and you see it in the mosaic. Like when Ian and I'll go over to Grandin Village, and the co-op's a miraculous story, just unbelievable. And CoLab is an amazing story, and Reed's Fine Furnishings. So there are all these people just doing their thing, and the theater, and unbelievable. And then I was in Spike's recently, and God bless Spike's, man. I mean, that place is a fantastic, virtually unchanged.
Spike's is an old bar in Grandin Village. It's been there
served me when I was 13, so
different owners.
It's been a long time ago. Yeah, it was definitely different owners, but that's an amazing place. I think what Nathan Webster's done at the Village Grill and Scratch Biscuit. So all you're trying to do is what naturally occurs organically over years and decades. And so fundamentally, it's not really, Riverdale's not about what I think it ought to be. It's about trying to create conditions where other people can come in and be themselves, and their personal velocity will just shape the place. And so I want as many people that do the work that I do over there as I can make happen. So Roanoke has an amazing sort of ecology of people who do this redevelopment work. And you think about Lucas and Isabel Thornton, you think about the Garlands, Brent Cochran, Chris Vail, Joe Thompson, Bill Chapman. I mean, it is a long list of people. Each one of them does their stuff differently. And so the dream would be to have as many folks over there kind of contributing sort of to the mosaic, I think.
Sometimes, I know you've done a lot of work recently in Danville, which has undergone this remarkable transformation. How much of what you do is kind of getting people to see, and the people you work with do, I don't, again, not just all about you, but is getting people to see that, in our midst, we have the infrastructure, we have the makings. I mean, Danville was pretty sad 20, 30 years ago, from my perspective anyway, in terms of what was going on demographically and everything else. how much of what you do is getting people to see it the way that you see it? Or,
Yeah.
imagine what could be if the tax credits are right and if
Oh boy,
all
right.
this stuff happens.
All that stuff. Yeah, so there's this big difference, I think. There's this sort of fork in the road where you're either on the bleeding edge or the leading edge. So the bleeding edge, Wasena is a good example of that. And so I lived in Wasena for 14 years, loved that neighborhood, and there was a period of time, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, where those of us that really loved that neighborhood and felt like it was awesome where it was, it just is an incredible place. You lived there for a long time. But we were a little bit on our heels. There was this sort of like, we were, the sort of dealers, thieves, and vandals kind of had the upper hand in Wasena for some period of time. And so I think it's kind of cool when private capital can sort of kung fu those situations and kind of take, return some of the neighborhood power to citizenry. And so I took Darlene Burcham, I still do this from time to time.
Again, former city manager.
Yeah, and put her in a car, because sometimes folks got to get out of the office and see things. And so we came over the Main Street Bridge, the old Rocket Bridge, and I said, now listen, Darlene, this is going to be hard to see because things were not awesome at that time. There was some legacy ownership that wasn't doing anything with any of those buildings, and the ice house, I guess, was basically boarded up. And I said, if you squint, you got to squint, but you'll see a Main Street little section here that could be more like Grandin Village. And this ice house could be apartments, and there's a lot of neat stuff around here. And then when you looked at Wasena on a map, it's like the ultimate location. It's like,
yeah, it's 3 minutes from
it's
downtown,
incredible,
right?
man. I mean, it's like getting downtown, getting to West Station, getting to Grandin Village, getting out towards, the
Towers
county,
and all,
everything. It's incredible. And her comment was hilarious. She goes, well, now I know you're crazy. That's what she said.
Well,
and I said, I understand that,
Yeah, and just so you know, this will be news to you, I think. Our oldest son, who lives in Annapolis, Maryland, is about to sign a lease in Wasena, a couple blocks from the house where we once lived, and moved back.
Max is coming home.
With his fiance, and we're very
Neat.
excited about all that. And that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
He wouldn't have seen it 20 years ago, like, oh, here's the neighborhood I want to live in, because he can pick what neighborhood he wants to live in.
People sometimes say, how did you know it would work? It's like, you don't know it'll work. It's just a chance worth taking a little bit. So that's bleeding edge. That's a different. Danville is sort of, I get the benefit. They had done, they have amazing, talk about an amazing good government story. And oh my gosh, I could talk for hours about, I think it's the best good government story in the Mid-Atlantic. I don't know of a better one in the United States. And so really outstanding city manager and Ken Larking, Corey Bobie in economic development. And there are a lot of people a lot of people that should be mentioned. But they started a very bold plan, they're probably 8 years into a 10-year plan, and they have totally transformed that community. And people think it's about Caesars. It really has nothing to do with Caesars.
The new casino.
Yeah, the new casino over there. They really were well underway and had compression in that engine, and their EDA.
Well, because they wouldn't have attracted Caesars Casino and Resort there if they didn't already have some things going on.
Well, I think that's true, and I think that, you're talking about really smart folks that could, what I call sort of go anywhere, do anything people. You could drop any of those people, in Palo Alto, and they're gonna thrive, and they just happen to be in Danville. And so Ina and I and our work over there have really benefited from all of their foundational work. And to us, it's just like having great playmates on the playground. It's like pickup basketball, and you're just having a great time and getting this work done. And it's like, there's hard stuff. We have to have a whole bunch of conversations about utilities and water lines and sewer and this and that. And it's not unlike Riverdale. You're sort of replacing things that were put in the ground 100 years ago, and now you kind of got to start over.
Right, those pipes,
Yeah.
once you start using them hard again, won't
Yeah.
last long. People, again, online commenters and others will throw out a word like gentrification.
Sure.
As something
It's a legitimate
to be
concern.
avoided.
It's
right.
a real concern, yeah.
But it occurs to me that like Riverdale is itself, in its 102 acres, it's not like nobody should have to, nobody's living there now who's going to be affected. It will impact the larger neighborhood. How do you think about that when you're looking at a project? Or is that even your job to worry about?
It's interesting. I mean, concerns about gentrification are real, and we're seeing more and more of them, more and more reason to be concerned in more and more places. It used to be kind of larger markets, but it's kind of everywhere now. And I think that part of what you have to do, and it's really great. Part of it just has to do with the mix. It's also not chasing every last nickel and dime. I mean, I don't know where the needlepoint pillow is that says a lot is enough, but having a bankable return on a project is enough. And then so my point is, you don't have to have every apartment be expensive. And so, for example, having a mix where art space would come in, and that stuff is definitively affordable.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about art space. I'm familiar with Helen Marriage, but I'm sure.
Yeah. And so art space, Helen Marriage's, and would be easy to confuse them. Helen Marriage is a friend of mine from Artichoke in the UK, and she's going to do a bunch of illumination stuff. But art space is run by these wonderful folks in St. Paul, Minnesota. They've never done a project in Virginia. They are the, pinnacle of creating artistic spaces, both galleries, studios, living spaces. And most artists, writers, musicians, painters, sculptors, etc., or many, maybe most, are definitively in the lower income. And so all they want to do is create what they create. And so ArtSpace tries to figure out how to make rents affordable so that they can have the peace of mind to have a, clean, safe, affordable place to live and do their work. And so just by having them in the mix, that'll be helpful. I mean, there will definitely be some market rate apartments someday, hopefully in Riverdale, but we'll definitely strive to keep some of those price points diverse. And the gentrification stuff can happen too in that commercial space. We wanted to keep as many of the legacy folks that we could. There's some who have selected, that we had 3 sort of rules. The rent's really cheap over there, so if you could just get that to us on time so we can keep making progress, and then sort of keep things sort of tidy, and then just thirdly be easy to work with. And some folks aren't interested in that, and some folks were more environmentally intense, and we weren't interested in keeping that around. And so we've sorted through all that, but we'd like to have like a dream. I think it would be amazing to have a glass blower over there and to make rent really really inexpensive, and so we're just going to have to tinker with that as we go along.
We got about 3 minutes or so left, but walk me through the timeline, your ideal timeline for Riverdale, and what does that mean for, there's one building that looks to me anyway, as a layman, there's the one that you do first, because that looks more like the Ice House or something like that.
Yeah, right.
And then there's the big hulking factory next to it. Do you have a sense of timeline for this project?
Fun news. I mean, I think last Thursday we received all of our responses to our request for proposals from master planners. And some of the best master planners in the country responded. They're excited. They came here on their own to visit before the proposals. We will try to get down to finalists by this Friday, and then and announce a final choice maybe 10 or 14 days after that. So there are 2 ways to look at it. One is on the 10th anniversary and kind of go backwards. I mean, on the 10th anniversary, it would be pretty awesome if, there were several hundred either rehab apartments. I think it would be cool if there were some ownership opportunities. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's condominiums or townhouses or whatever, but you want the lights on at night. That's what living space really does. And I'd like to be able to drive down 9th Street and sort of see, some restaurants and some interesting sort of ways into the village. I think we want to have that legacy sort of maker presence. that has always been there. I think having art space there would be a huge dream come true. I mean, I was involved with a group of people that tried to attract them 21 or 2 years ago, and it didn't take that time, so hopefully it will this time. And I think I hope we'll see some new construction. I would love to see, you know, some new apartments and maybe some educational buildings or medical buildings or whatever. We don't have any big things in mind except to be just open.
Right, right. Well, and I think it's going to be fun for all of us. If you haven't driven down those roads in a while,
definitely.
drive by now and get the before, right?
Yeah.
And that's when we're trying to follow it along, and shockingly, you know, that's pretty much the time we have. And so as I wrap up the program, I'd just like to thank Ed for taking time out of an insane schedule to help us all understand what's going to be happening at Riverdale in the years to come. For What It Takes, I'm Tom Landon.